All right, we've got the MentisWave. Entitlements Are Not Rights. Oh boy, I can already tell I'm gonna love this one. Oh, here we go. I've been waiting for this my whole life. The recently ended 20th century was characterized by a level of human rights violations unparalleled in all of human history. Oof. Let's see it.
Hey, internets. So the latest thing that people are
Mentis.
freaking out about is SNAP food benefits running out as a result of the continued government shutdown. For those few of you out there not familiar, that is just the food welfare program in the United States, which enrolls people into the EBT program, basically allowing them to...
It was Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, right? SNAP? Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. I think that's what it means.
Get some free stuff as long as they meet certain criteria. Most of the time the criteria is simply being poor, but there are some loopholes around that, so it's a bit more complicated. But anyway, the problem here is that people are once again showing that a large portion of the population does not understand the difference between an entitlement and a right, with the common misconception being that food is a human right. And while
I love this. I love this because it's so true. That people don't even know the difference between these things.
A very simplistic level, that might sound reasonable, because hey, everybody needs to eat, right? There's a lot of really serious issues that come up when you call it a right. Because food benefits are not a right. Food benefits are an entitlement. What is the difference and why does it matter? Well, that's one of the things we're going to go over in this video, but I'm also going to be refuting a common socialist false dichotomy using Voosh as an example. Yeah, I know, it's been a while since I refuted Voosh, but he gives a really good example of this particular bad argument. Another is explaining the problem with entitlements and how they pervert the concept of charity and caring.
Guys, I know we just started the video, but I just want to link this to you like right now. I really like MentisWave's videos a lot. I just like the logic and the philosophy that Mentis talks about on each issue, and I really do appreciate them. So if you guys want to if you're into that kind of stuff, you're into ideas, I think Mentis is a really good one to watch. Highly recommend.
Poor into something actually quite hateful. And also how there's a lot of data that shows that the current status social welfare system is at the very least in need of some serious reform, due to some very serious, arguably intentional flaws. But first off, this is going to be another self-sponsored video. I do happen to have a merch store. It's got some pretty good quality stuff, and profits really do.
I got that Fumo hat.
I do happen to have a merch store. It's got some...
I literally have this Fumo hat. I'll show it to you guys later on stream. I love this Fumo hat. It's great.
Pretty good quality stuff, and profits really do.
This is a based AI video.
To help out the channel, and I'll also be putting the taxationist theft merch on sale for a little bit. Because it is theft, and it's also one of the key issues that makes the distinction.
I actually need this on sale. I'm gonna buy this like right. Like actually, I'm not joking. I'll buy. I'll go on break and I'll buy it. I want the mug.
Between what is a right and what is an entitlement. So a link to that will be in the description below.
I actually want the hat
let's
too.
Get started.
Actually, I want the hat too. The taxation is theft. I want this hat too. It's a sick hat.
What is a right and what is an entitlement. So a link to that will be in the description below.
Might have been stop motion, not AI. I'm pretty sure it's AI. I'm like...
Started with just that. What is the difference between a right and an entitlement? Well, rights come from the concept of natural laws, which are based on asking the question, who is the rightful owner of certain scarce resources? These are effectively laws that every sentient being understands is needed for society to peacefully function, since reality has scarce resources. For example, the fact that two people cannot occupy the same space at the same time, or cannot use the same resource at the same time. Thus, for peace to exist, these conflicts must be easily resolvable, and preferably avoided. Natural law fixes this by dictating that the one who first transforms something with, say, their own labor by their own will is thus the rightful owner. Whereas entitlements, on the other hand, are more like privileges. Privileges are something that requires external labor for somebody else to provide. So another way... It's
kind of the difference between like a positive right and a negative right. That basically, I don't believe in any rights that force other people to do things for you. I believe in rights that basically make it so other people can't interfere with you. Those are kind of like the difference, basically.
to understand it is kind of the positive and negative liberty thing.
There you go.
Rights
There you
are
go.
freedom from
That's
things,
what I was
whereas
gonna say.
privileges and entitlements are freedoms to have things.
Yes.
For example, a right would be the right to live peacefully in your home, free from some psychopath coming over to murder you, or freedom from someone coming and stealing your stuff. Those are examples of natural rights. And so when you say that food is a human right, you kind of create a slight problem here, because that's not really a freedom from something, but rather it is claiming entitlement to something. So imagine a world where we say that food is a human right, and person A grows a potato, but then person B wants the potato, but person A doesn't want to give the potato they grew to them. Under natural law, the resolution of this conflict is...
So like a good example, like using this would be like, say like winter is coming and like winter has arrived, and to feed your family, you farmed a bushel of potatoes. So you have like this bushel of potatoes that like you're gonna eat over the winter, right? But then, you know, person B is like, well, I didn't prepare for winter, but I need to live, so those are my potatoes. I need those potatoes, right? And you're like, well, no, I need to feed my family these potatoes, right? Like, do they have a right to like then take it from you?
Pretty obvious. The first guy grew the potato, he gets to decide what happens with it.
Yeah.
If he wants to give it to the second guy, because
violence is the answer, says Not the Abyss. Well, all rights are only exist due to the capabilities of violence, basically. Rights in of themselves are meaningless, basically. They only exist through force.
the second guy is starving, sure, then he should be able to do that. But if he doesn't want to give his potato away, for example, say he needs it to eat for himself, well, then that's also fine, because it's his potato. And yet when you try to say this is an entitlement, that food should be a human right, you're necessarily creating a conflict here. You're saying that person B should be entitled to the potato just as much as person A, even though they didn't do anything to grow the potato.
Yes,
Which effectively means that you're giving green light to the idea of theft. And so this tells us a simple way to tell the difference between an entitlement and a right, which is that entitlements necessarily create conflict and contradiction with other people's rights.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because when you say food is a human right, then that means that the person who grew the food somehow doesn't have a right to the food that they grew, but the person who wants it does. But what about the rights of the other guy? It doesn't really make much sense. So when people say food should be a human right, what they're really saying is something more along the lines of farmers should be enslaved and forced at gunpoint to provide free food. Or the grocery store clerk, or quote-unquote society at large.
True. It basically
or
slavery,
in the Western world, how it usually currently operates is that it's on the taxpayer's dime, regardless of whether or not the taxpayer wants to fund such a thing. And now the usual retort to this is that...
Because the thing is if you think about taxes are enforced through force. Because if you don't pay your taxes, even if you don't agree with the thing, right? So say they're like, well, we need your tax money to go like pay for food for like, you know, these people, right? And say you're like, well, I don't want to give my money to be food for those people. Well, then they'll come arrest you or they'll come fine you, which is, again, it all comes down to force in the end, regardless. They're using violence to like make you give your stuff to people that you don't want to give it to. That's why it's violence.
Everybody needs food. And yeah, that's true, but then you're just confusing rights with needs. If two people need the same thing at the same time, like say both person A and person B are starving, we still need to have rights to decide who gets to have the potato. But perhaps most importantly is the fact that you don't actually need food to be a human right in order to have a social safety net in order to provide food for poor people. Which kind of brings us to the standard false dichotomy whenever those of us crazy free marketeer libertarians point this out, is the accusation that we just want the poor to starve. So here's a clip from Voosh showing this false dichotomy in action.
The Republicans are advocating on a platform more or less of open cruelty, let the poor starve. And because of that, the end to SNAP benefits, of course, funding when, you know...
Give me free stuff or you're mean!
ended on Saturday. They haven't really been treating that as the political nuclear bomb that it really is. But we don't want the poors to have those anyway. I've seen a bunch of Republicans on social media who have been essentially arguing that it's good the SNAP benefits have ended because it's good that people are suffering. If they can't pay for their food, they can't pay for their food, and that's that.
So yeah, pretty typical socialist rhetoric
Oh,
there,
boy.
with this false dichotomy being that you have this false choice between either a socialist welfare entitlement system or the poor starve to death. That unless you are in favor of socialism, that must mean that you just want the people who can't immediately afford food to all just starve. Very typical false choice there, because of course there are ways to make the poor not have to starve that are not based on socialism. Because the problem with entitlements or viewing food as a human right in this particular context,
charity has always existed since the dawn of time, basically.
Is that it's an issue between involuntary welfare systems and voluntary welfare systems. That's the third choice that's being ignored here. The possibility of a welfare system, but people
like churches, like you've got churches who do food drives. You have people who, work at soup kitchens and stuff like this, and all of these like volunteer programs in order to like better their community.
Voluntarily put money into it. Like, for example, a community mutual aid fund.
Yep,
There's
exactly.
a grocery store nearby me that actually recently started one up. Things that allow people in the community to voluntarily help each other.
And it's actually better when it's, and this is kind of like the point. This is kind of the point that a lot of people have, on the conservative side of things, is that these things are best handled on a local level. Basically, like having the bigger the scope of the thing, like something that is like nationwide, for instance, isn't as good because you have no idea. You have nothing to do with people. You have less to do with somebody who's living 1,000 miles away than you do with people that are living like within your community, right? And not only that, people who are living in like these kind of smaller communities, they understand the needs of those communities a lot more. So it's always better handled at like a more community level, basically.
As opposing forcing somebody else to help. Socialists love to equivocate between these two concepts, the concept of entitlement and charity, in order to try and make themselves look like the good guys. Because,
The funny thing is if you look at the data, actually conservatives are far more charitable. That's the funny thing.
Everybody likes Santa Claus. He comes once a year and gives all the kids a bunch of free stuff. And everyone's happy and it's joyful, etc., etc. And that's the kind of optics that socialists are going for. They want to be viewed as the heroes just bringing the people the things that they need to survive. But that is absolutely not what socialists are actually advocating for. They're advocating for an entitlement forced welfare system rather than a charity-based voluntary welfare system. And if you look deep into socialist theory, you'll find out that they actually, at many points, admit this. They don't like the concept of charity because it hurts their ability to sell socialism. And so the whole sale of entitlements is just one big gigantic grift. Because obviously those of us advocating for a charity-based social safety net, or at the very least mutual aid-based social safety nets, or even insurance-based social safety nets, those of us advocating for these alternative systems are not actually against social safety nets. We're not saying let the poor starve. We're saying that involuntary forced welfare systems are inherently dysfunctional and lead
not only are they dysfunctional just on a level of like waste, they're dysfunctional on a level of moral. Like they're morally dysfunctional, and they're also bad for like the what's the word? They're bad for the morals of society, basically, morals and social cohesion, because it creates people who basically believe that they deserve things for their mere existence, and that's a really bad thing to have in society.
To contradictory incentives, such as politicians designing the system to create permanent dependence instead of actually incentivizing people to get out of poverty.
And it also creates another situation that's also really, really weird, is that they're able to legally bribe people by saying, if you vote for us, we will give you more shit, basically. They've created like a loophole where they're able to actually bribe people for votes.
And that's just the start of the problems. Because a lot of people out there, they might look at this and think, okay, well, it doesn't really matter because people need to eat. Food is a human need. So as long as there is a social safety net of some sort, what does it matter if it's a public or a private social safety net? What does it matter if it's an involuntary system or a voluntary system? So long as people are getting food on their plates. And the answer is that when you have it be an involuntary system, a forced system, a rights-based system, you actually end up creating a lot of unintended consequences. And to prove my point, for the rest of this video, I'm going to go into what those consequences are. The first of these being that entitlement-based systems lead to the people, well, becoming entitled. You see, rather than being thankful for the food that they are receiving via a charity or a voluntary system, or being grateful to their community for having
this, in my opinion, is one of the biggest cancers in society right now, is the sense of entitlement that people have. This is like society breakdown levels of cancer.
A mutual aid fund or something. When you have it be an entitlement system, since entitlements at their core are really just rooted in theft, rather than being thankful for what they're receiving for free, they instead view it as a civil rights victory, as a right that they fought for, and so they deserve this free stuff. And so when people go to use their EBT card,
Bro, Mentis, bro.
say in the United States again,
That's
rather than
crazy.
being grateful for living in a rich country that's able to provide them with this, it's instead viewed as a right, that they deserve this card, with a nice big middle finger to the people who are net payers into this system. And this mentality is a lot more common than you think. If you look up people just complaining about EBT benefits not going through this month, this mentality of gives me this now, you owe this to me.
If you don't give it to me, we're gonna fuck shit up, basically, right? It's crazy.
Seems to unfortunately
so
be more of the norm rather than the exception. And this is what I mean by what I said earlier, that entitlements pervert the concept of charity and turn it into something that is very hateful and spiteful. Rather than the man receiving the potato from the man who created the potato, giving thanks to him for being kind to his fellow man, in an entitlement involuntary system like this, now it's more of a highway robbery. So instead it's viewed as, you owe me this potato. You owe me this money, because you just do. And once you've given that kind of behavior the green light, you create a really weird thing where it leads to this very obnoxious slippery slope where people start to think of everything as a right, because then it's less based on what people need and instead based more on equality. So for example, a common one I've seen is that socialists have been trying to say that DoorDash should be a human right, because it's apparently not fair that it's only the people
Wait, what? Is that real?
who can afford the delivery of
Holy
DoorDash
shit, bro.
can have food delivered to them from their local finest restaurants. Oh no, that's not fair. Everybody should have that right. And I've seen a lot of liberals laugh and criticize the commies for saying things like this as well. Because of course that's absolutely ridiculous. A service like DoorDash can't be a human right. I mean, what if nobody wants to do it anymore? Are we going to start forcing people at gunpoint to start doing deliveries or something? It's ridiculous. But what people don't realize is that that is actually just the logical conclusion of what happens when you give in to the communists' first claim. When you've accepted that whatever they want or claim that they need is a human right, then
and this is a common problem, is that they'll have some kind of like they'll have some idea, some grand idea of like what society should be, but then when you take the things that they say and you take them like all the way, right? Like, where are the brakes on that, right? They'll be like, oh, but they'll never get that far. It'll never get that far, but it could, right? It could get that far. And you take it all the way to its logical conclusion, it's always ridiculous.
you're just going to keep asking for more and more quote-unquote rights that aren't actually rights at all. That is the problem that happens when you don't just reject the whole concept on principle. And so that's just another reason why there needs to be a very thick line between what is considered an entitlement and what is considered a right. Because if you don't, then eventually the commies are just going to say that everything should be their right. And then on the flip side, these mandatory welfare systems, in addition to making the receivers feel entitled, it also breeds resentment within net payers of the welfare for the people who don't want to be paying for it, but are forced to pay for it anyways. For instance, much of the rest of Vosh's video was him just going over various clips of people making fun of people on EBT, and his audience lamenting about how these people are demons and such selfish, greedy jerks. So just like there are people out there who think they deserve welfare and are acting entitled to it on camera, there are also people making fun of the people acting entitled in bad taste. But the thing that socialists don't realize here is that this is just another expected outcome of involuntary welfare, because it's not charity, it's theft. Roughly 12% of Americans are on SNAP, so what the state is effectively doing is just stealing from the 88% of the population that is not on SNAP and giving it to the others.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to charity and actually voluntarily giving to people who are less fortunate,
And the thing is it creates a lot of resentment too, because you have these people who are, you know, struggling to feed their families and to maintain like whatever their quality of life is. And you see these really entitled people, you know, being, and these are actual clips where you have a person that's like, oh, you know, I bought all this shit using my Snap cards. And then the person going like, oh, those are really, really nice nails. Yeah, I paid $80 for them. So it's like, you got like $100 of free food. And then you instead use the money that you should have been spending on food and use it on like vanity projects for yourself. And it's really annoying to people that are actually like working and working to feed their families and maintain their quality of their standards of life. They get irritated because it's like, What the fuck? Like, I'm giving you money to like do your nails? What the fuck? That's not what I'm giving you money for. And like, obviously, like it's fungible, right? So it's like the money that they spent on their nails, they could have spent on food instead. Leaflit, DMs. It's relevant. It's relevant. Ooh.
This is having massive impact. I went and got my eyebrows done the other day, and my eyebrow technician was like, they're going to fire 2 technicians from here because all of our clients don't have money to come.
Wait. Hold up, chat. They just said that on main? Wait, they just said that on main? No, this is on CNN?
This is having massive impact. I went and got my eyebrows done the other day, and my eyebrow technician was like, they're going to fire 2 technicians from here because all of our clients don't have money to come. She's not on Snap.
That's it.
This is
How many of you guys are tired? Hey, who's tired in chat? Who's tired? Who's tired of paying taxes? Who's tired? Who's over it? Fuck taxes, am I right? I'm not a big fan of the government, man.
Well, that usually makes people feel good because they're voluntarily helping someone in need. But when someone's stealing from you, well, it's a completely different story.
They always show you like oh, you don't care about the kids, and the kids aren't gonna get their cereal. Like, bro.
That's why you see all this resentment. And pretty much anybody could figure this out if you just think about it for a few minutes or so. Imagine if your neighbor living next door to you needs some food and you decide to voluntarily give him $20, versus imagine if the neighbor broke into your house and stole your money. I mean, you're obviously going to have a very different feeling about those 2 different scenarios.
Exactly.
And so that's why we're seeing so much negativity surrounding this subject. Anyways, the next problem is the welfare trap. Because one very interesting difference between private mutual aid funds and public welfare schemes is that mutual aid community-based things like this, they don't really have welfare traps. You only see that in involuntary entitlement-based socialist schemes. And why is that? Well, first, for those of you who are not familiar with this problem, a welfare trap occurs when a person who is eligible to receive benefits suddenly becomes ineligible. And this leads them to a situation where they actually have access to less goods and services than before they lost eligibility. And this is generally due to the welfare system not having a way to phase someone out of.
Dude, this man, I really don't want to say it, but this seems like it's intentional. I mean, it's one or the other. Either it's 100% intentional or they're just terrible at design. They don't know what the fuck that they're doing. Which I guess that's believable for the government.
So, for example, say eligibility requires someone to earn no more than $20,000 a year, and the welfare benefit is providing them with something that is worth $10,000 a year. Well, in that case, what's going to happen to this person if they get offered a raise at their job to make, say, $25,000 a year? Or say they have an opportunity to work more hours or find a better career path, but they can't find a job that gives them more value than the welfare
Yes, miss, I live down here for real.
benefit
That's
they're
awesome.
receiving
That's awesome,
is
man.
giving them at the very least. Or what if they just feel that they can't get that kind of job? Well, the unfortunate answer is that this person will be incentivized to turn down the offer to earn
exactly.
more. They find themselves in this insane position where it's not worth the risk going for an opportunity for a better life.
Yeah, and I think that this is a huge fucking problem that we need to solve. Like, this is ridiculous. That like you de-incentivize people from prospering in order to keep them in that thing. And again, like maybe it's pure chance. Maybe they're just stupid. They don't know how to design a system. Maybe they're just that dumb. It is the government after all. But part of me is kind of like, it seems like it's on purpose. You know, it seems like it's on purpose.
Life, which would normally just be completely irrational. But that's what welfare traps do. It's when people who are receiving welfare become incentivized to basically stay poor and stay dependent on the system. And there's pretty good data suggesting that at the very least there's about 10% of people on welfare systems who fall into this kind of trap. And that's a severe lowball estimate. because since it's incentive-based, it's actually very difficult to quantify that kind of data. The actual extent of this problem is almost unimaginable, especially when you look at welfare systems in the US and where they fall.
And to be honest, I don't really blame anybody that is on this specific that has this issue. I think it makes total sense that, like, if you had to watch out for your family and they're like, yo, I'm gonna give you a raise, and you're like, yo, don't give me a raise because I'm gonna lose all my fucking thing. I'm gonna lose even more money if you give me a raise. It makes sense to me.
Off. Like one study from Daniel Mitchell showing that someone who's earning $29,000, if they are stacking multiple welfare benefits, can actually be better off than somebody earning $69,000. That's a huge freaking cliff. But even if somebody is not on the maximum amount of welfare benefits, there's even smaller welfare cliffs that are still pretty substantial. Like if a person is on both Medicaid and SNAP for food benefits, and that person earns $29,000 or so. Well, they're still going to be incentivized to not take any better work until they can at least secure earning about $37,000.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can see the
But it's really hard though to make that gap, right? Like the only really way to make that gap is to completely go work at a different place. Self-study, and it's really, really difficult to make up that amount of a difference at one time.
problem is very pervasive and common, but the absolute weirdest thing about this problem is how obviously easy it would be to fix it. Anybody just using simple middle school 6th grade math can figure out that.
That's what I'm saying. How is it not on purpose? How is it not on purpose? How do we have this Mihono bourbon problem? How do we have it?
All you would have to do would be to make it so that the welfare systems decay at a constant rate based on income, instead of people just suddenly losing eligibility at random points. Like, for example, if the welfare benefit, instead of vanishing at 20K, the benefit payout decayed at a rate of 10% of their earnings past 15K. Well, that would make it so that no matter what, they would be always better off earning more money. Like if everybody in the United States got $100 of UBI a month.
Mihono bourbon!
Figure out that all you would have to do would be to make it so that the welfare systems decay at a constant rate based on income, instead of people just suddenly losing eligibility at random points. Like, for example, if the welfare benefit, instead of vanishing at 20K, the benefit payout decayed at a rate of 10% of their earnings past 15K. Well, that would make it so that no matter what, they would be always better off earning more money. Like if everybody in the United States got $100 of UBI a month, and it decayed at, say, a penny for every dollar each person earns, well, that would make it so that at no point in time would a person be getting less money from their benefit in a way that they wouldn't be better off just earning more money at their actual work. Mm-hmm. At no point in time would the person be in a position where they are incentivized to reject a better career opportunity or a better life. Yep. And yet, when we look at these entitlement-based welfare systems in the US, we see that some of these benefits often do decay a little bit, but then they all completely cut off and people lose eligibility at, again, some random arbitrary point of income. Why? Are the politicians and bureaucrats in charge of this just dumb and don't understand basic math? Well, obviously, of course not. Of course they understand it. And they're
doing it on purpose, man. These people are so fucking evil, bro.
Had it many years to fix it, but they keep it this way anyways. And again, why is that? Well, unfortunately, the reason is that it's most likely intentional. Because when a politician in charge of a welfare program that is non-voluntary, well, what happens? How do they get funding for that? Well, again, they can just force people to pay for it. Because of course, the money for the benefit is not coming out of the politician's individual pocket. No, it's coming out of the pocket of the taxpayer, whether they like it or not. So the politician or the bureaucrat in charge of the program, they don't have to worry about personal loss to them. What they have to worry about is whether or not the program is...
Oh my God. Whether or not the program continues to get the same amount of money, whether or not they get votes to stay in office. It's the legal bribe.
Justified. And what's one simple way to do that? Well, to get as many people stuck in it as you possibly can. And so they design in these welfare cliffs in order to trap people into poverty, making them dependent on the state. Evil, and so thus they continually keep voting to keep that politician in power. And so in a very disgusting twist, the politician actually benefits from those people staying in poverty. And of course,
and this is always the case. They hurt the people they claim to care about. They hurt them while standing on all of their suffering. They stand on top of it. They pat themselves on the back. They have like these big rooms, big circle jerk rooms, patting. So, oh, good, great job. You're the good. Wow, I did such a great job today. I'm such a good person. But they're actually so fucking bad. They're actually so fucking bad for the people that they actually claim to care about. It's ridiculous, man. It's every time. The people are always, I'm the nicest person. I care so much about the people who are on welfare. They're always the worst. They're always the worst.
Of course, the state can then use this to justify higher taxation on the people who are net payers already, because more people are in the system. More people are stuck below the welfare line. And so it just keeps ballooning and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is, of course, not the incentive with a voluntary welfare system. In, say, a mutual aid benefit, since you can't force people to be net payers, in order to keep the funds going, in order for it to be economically viable, you want people to get out of poverty as quickly as possible. And so mutual aid society benefits, they're usually either temporary or designed in such a way to lift people out of poverty, or they decay at a very specific rate, as opposed to intentionally trying to make people
Falcon, thank you for the bits. I live in a socialist country, and I can assure you that the only reason the government would do this is to keep its citizens under control. No government means no subsidies, no assistance, no healthcare, no pensions. You can't leave if you don't have enough money. And you can't make money easily. Man, I'm so sorry, Falcon. I hope you get out of that, man.
Permanent dependence on the system. And this thus reveals another very big problem with the difference between entitlements and rights, and the consequences of confusing the two. Entitlements actually encourage people to do things that don't make any economic sense.
Falcon, I'd totally trade you for one of the commies here. I'd totally do it.
Another issue is that entitlements
Commie
create a problem when it comes to immigration.
We should really do that. We should have a commie exchange program where we take people that like live in like communist areas and they hate communism, and we trade them one for people that want to like move to a communist country. Just exchange program. We should totally do it.
Normally with immigration, when you have a social safety net that is based on freedom of association, immigrants can't just come in and immediately claim benefits. And so the result of that is that you end up attracting better immigrants with higher education that are actually coming to the country with something to offer, rather than trying to get something out of it. And yet when you have a whole bunch of these involuntary welfare entitlement programs, then the opposite occurs. Then you end up attracting immigrants who are just coming for the gibs. And this is actually a bigger problem than much of the data out there shows. Because a lot of the data just looks at it from the standpoint of how many immigrants are getting welfare benefits. Because a lot of the... And this is...
Man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's actually a bigger problem than much of the data out there shows. Because a lot of the data just looks at it from the standpoint of how many immigrants are getting welfare benefits and how many citizens are getting welfare benefits. Well, that doesn't account for one very obvious and actually quite common scenario, which is that when two poor immigrant parents come in, have an anchor baby, and then funnel a bunch of welfare benefits through their baby. Because in that scenario, the benefit is technically being provided to a US citizen, but because these benefits take an entire household into account, you could actually end up with a situation where it's mostly immigrants that are receiving the actual benefit.
That's
and indeed,
ridiculous,
studies that look at welfare use by household status, like this one from the Center
is what I
for
mean. They'll use this. They'll use this too, and they'll say, "What do you mean? There's no illegal people getting any benefits. It's not legal for that to happen." And they'll say stupid shit like that, but then they don't actually look into like the cases of abuse, loopholes in the system. They don't count any of that shit. But legally, you can't do it. That's what they always say.
Immigration studies quite consistently show that immigrants are indeed using a lot of welfare. Like in New York, something around 70 to 68% of immigrant households are using some kind of welfare system. That is an insane number, especially when you consider again that the problem is likely worse than what's suggested, because a lot of these numbers are kind of kept low by certain systems. Like, for example, technically illegal immigrants aren't supposed to be on various welfare benefits, but in some states, like the state I live in Oregon, they don't really do their due diligence.
I'm sorry, Mentis. I'm so sorry, bro. I hope you become an Idahoan soon. That'd be pretty cool.
Sure that the people are applying for things like SNAP actually are who they say they are. And so naturally, if you don't actually have to prove that you are legally entitled to a benefit, people can just lie on their application and get the benefit anyway. That's the main reason why it's ridiculous to claim that there aren't any illegal immigrants on the welfare system. Because there obviously are, you just have to dig beyond the official paperwork. And this all crashes into another big problem, which is the voter cattle problem.
And here
all of these people who are being trapped.
Here it is, the legal bribe, the loophole here, where they're able to actually bribe people to vote for them.
into this welfare system of entitlement, well, what are they going to vote for? Well, of course, they're just going to keep voting for more free stuff because they don't really understand the problem that they're
This is
in.
the
The result
tyranny.
being that the country
The tyranny of democracy right here.
is eventually flooded with people who are net receivers rather than net payers, which is the biggest problem with entitlement programs, which is that they're
Change
not
voting.
sustainable because they actively incentivize people to not produce more wealth. Then financial collapse of the
Change voting to only producers and only producers and households. This is dumb. This is so dumb.
system becomes a question of when rather than if. And so ultimately our politicians have been incentivized to create this slow march towards socialism. And this of course creates the biggest contradiction of them all. How can food
There should be a list of things that you can do to get a vote. It should be like kind of like Starship Troopers, to be honest. If you like serve in the military, you get a vote. If you get if you have like a household and you have kids, then if you have a married couple and you produce children and you take care of those children, you get a vote. If you do some kind of like you create like a business or something like that that is actually like generating taxes, then you get a vote. So things like that. Basically, some skin in the game before you get a vote, I think.
be a human right if food is no longer being produced? You have to make the food in order to eat the food. It's an obvious conundrum when you
You know Starship Troopers was satire? I'm not satiring them. I'm just telling the truth. Crimbo. I'm just telling the truth. I know it's satire, but I think that part I like that part, honestly. I think that part's good because of this reason. Because of this reason where you can legally bribe people for their own benefit to steal from other people. It's ridiculous.
think about it, but because it's all trapped up in multiple layers of bureaucracies and different welfare systems, people often just completely forget this obvious fact. When the people who want the potato but don't want to do the work to create the potato are allowed to steal from the people who did create the potato, well then eventually you're just going to incentivize society where nobody wants to make potatoes, period. Because that's really what makes the difference of an entitlement. The problem with entitlements and privileges is that they require the labor of somebody else in order to give you what you want. And that's just another reason why if somebody has to fulfill the desire for you, it can never really be considered a right. It's not just because of the contradiction that creates in that it must necessarily...
Basically, my concern is I think that people should have skin in the game in order to vote, whatever we determine that to be. I think the idea that like you get a vote for existing like doesn't make any sense to me.
Infringe on somebody else's rights if you're basically allowing them to be stolen from. It also just has the problem where it eventually creates a society
Like
where,
we don't anyway.
where nobody wants to be the producers, because why become a producer in a society when you can just become a taker? And we as society, especially those of us in Western society where this is going on, really need to figure a way out of this fast. Because as the current system is going, the
I think it's
national
over,
debt
bros.
just keeps getting bigger.
I think it's over, bros. Like, I'm kind of a doomer when it comes to this topic. I think it's just kind of, I don't know what you possibly could do. Like, I think it's already reached like critical mass basically. And there's too many people that are voting to get free shit that it's kind of cooked, honestly.
Likely to reach 40 trillion soon, and people keep voting for more Gibbs and more problems that cause the debt to balloon. And so while in the short run, yes, it does suck that some people are not getting their food, we really need to ask how we got here and why there aren't enough mutual aid practices in place. And the answer is because people have become too dependent on the government. We really need to acknowledge the fact that the current system is very flawed and designed to create dependence, even if you don't agree with...
Please do not feed the birds. Feeding creates a dependent population that is potential health hazard and makes costs a costly mess. How come the state parks know this? Why do they know this? They obviously know what they're talking about.
With the idea that welfare should be privatized, it is at the very least in need of serious reform. A few compromises I've seen that have been floated are things like changing the welfare system into a greater negative income tax bracket, effectively creating UBI for the poor that decays at the income tax rate, or simply recognizing that the politicians in charge of...
Walla, thank you so much for the bits, by the way. There's one specific issue with only providers being able to vote. Businesses can fire people strategically to change who can vote before voting day. No. I don't mean like I don't mean like the workers, the individual workers. Walla. I mean just the business owner. Basically, like a business owner, maybe like military. The thing with like a household gets like one vote total. I think like that would be good. or you could even like there's a lot of solutions for this. Like obviously they all have their own pluses and minuses. Like you could go with a like you're a zero burden taxpayer. You could use that, for example, as a I don't know how you would calculate that. Obviously we'd have to like completely change the way we figure out. We'd have to completely change the way that we like we keep records of like how much money people are making, stuff like that, which they already do anyway with taxes, but we'd have to be like kind of more specific with it. Things like that, basically. That there would have to be like some number that they come to, like this is the amount of money that you pay into taxes, and this is the amount of money that a average person takes away from taxes, and then you would have to like find a number there.
The current welfare system are corrupt and have intentionally created a very messed up system designed to keep themselves in power at the expense of both the taxpayers and the poor, who are trapped in eternal poverty. And unless people become aware of that, then
Crimbo says, I think only billionaires should have votes. They are worth more than regular humans. I think you're joking, but I didn't say that. I didn't say billionaires only. Well, I didn't say billionaires. I didn't say that. That's not my argument. I don't know if that was to me or something, but I think it is sarcasm. I don't know if that's to me, but that's straw manning my point, Crimbo.
The welfare trap is just going to keep existing. Other fixes also include just improving the medical industry by removing regulatory barriers.
And even if you wanted to say I was wrong, even if you wanted to say that I was wrong and that there's a better solution for it, you would still have to concede that the current status quo of how it's set up is actually creating a lot of bad incentives. And again, like there's actual proof of this, like by just looking online. Basically, you can see the people abusing the system, the people that are super entitled due to the system. You can see that it's creating a bad result. And my primary interest is in fixing it. So if you have a better solution for how to fix it, I'm all ears. But I haven't heard one, basically.
Barriers that cause increased costs, thus reducing the price of medical care, which would have the second order effect of helping those stuck in the Medicaid welfare trap. There is just so much more that could be done, even if not perfect, would at the very least make things better. But unfortunately, neither Republicans or Democrats seem interested.
True.
And honestly, as long as
fuck both of them, am I right, chat? Fuck both of them.
People remain unaware of the problems caused by entitlements,
Totally
politicians
agree.
really have no incentive
I
to
totally
stop
agree. This isn't even a partisan thing. I think both of them are retarded in this case.
scamming us. Anyways, that is all I have to say. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And you can also support my content on Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, or again by buying some merch, of which the Taxation is Theft merch is on sale. Thanks again for watching. That is all.
All right. I still need to watch this one. Was this refuting breadtubers? I still need to look at that one. I haven't looked at it yet. I'll link you guys the video. Make sure you give it a like, and if you want more of that kind of stuff, Mentis has a lot of breakdowns like that, and I really like them. I linked it to you guys. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, a sub. If you're feeling generous, give it a comment too. Dropping a comment actually significantly helps the algorithm a lot. So yeah, give them a comment if you want based. This is my alt account. It doesn't even have a name, guys. Look, my alt account doesn't even have a name. It's just fucking Leaflit fonts 4178.
I'm not a big fan of the government.